I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 10th, 2017 Park and Recreation Commission meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the roll call. Janet?
Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Willett?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner McCormick?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Strother?
Here.
Commissioner Darling?
Here.
Commissioner Keeley?
Here.
Commissioner Shepard?
Here.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of our meeting agenda. And so if I could have somebody
So moved.
in a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. The next item is approval of the meeting minutes from our September 12th, 2017 meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. The next item on our agenda is community comment, but I don't see anyone in the audience, so I think we'll move right on to reports and recommendations. So the first item is the comprehensive plan kickoff, and Todd Thorson is going to take us through that. Just as a little bit of background, he did walk myself and Greg and Eileen through that last week. Was it just last week? And so we have a lot of work ahead of us. A lot of work over the next couple of months, and then it'll be presented in March for comment and kind of feedback. So I'll turn it over to you, Todd.
Good evening, Commissioners and Madam Chairman. It feels very strange to be on this side of the dais. It's more intimidating than I thought it would be. So I'll give you a quick kind of overview of what the comprehensive plan is, because I think everyone talks about it, but I don't think very few people have actually read the comprehensive plan. And then specifically talk about your role as the Parks and Recreation Commission in the update of our Edina Comprehensive Plan. The comprehensive plan is mandated by state law for every community to provide an update every 10 years. It is intended to be an aspirational document. What does Edina want to be when it grows up? It is run through the Metropolitan Council. The Metropolitan Council is primarily concerned with land use and infrastructure. So that has traditionally kind of been the bent of the comprehensive plan, but over the years it's expanded to more and more, getting into economic competitiveness, environment, broader issues than just the infrastructure involved in running a city. So with that in mind, as I said, the last time the plan was updated was in 2008, and we are approaching 2018. At the end of the year, we need to have a plan updated for Edina. Under state law, the planning commission of each city is responsible for producing the comprehensive plan and passing it on to the city council for their approval, because ultimately it is their comprehensive plan as the elected officials of Edina. We've engaged some consultants to help us in this process, and if you've looked at the comprehensive plan, you know it's a rather lengthy document, lots and lots of writing. So we do use outside consultants not only to help create the document, but also to facilitate a lot of the processes involved in making that document. Fortunately for us on the Planning Commission, we don't actually have to write it. The consultants are responsible for that. And keep in mind also, there will be a number of public hearings along the way before the comprehensive plan is formally adopted by the city. So it's never been intended to be adopted or created in secret. There's a number of steps where the public is involved at the beginning, along the way, and then at the end before it's finally approved. It will be, there'll be numerous public hearings along those lines. So specifically, what do we need from the Parks and Recreation Commission? The most important thing we ask is that you review the policies and goals outlined in the 2008 plan and identify changes that sections that need to be eliminated or improved. Some of them may need to be rewritten or completely eliminated. And then also look to add any new ideas that have come forward since the last comprehensive plan, which was 10 years ago. And also, one of the things we're really attempting to do with this comprehensive plan is draw things together. And I think if you look kind of the 2008 comprehensive plan, it was very siloed. Every chapter kind of existed in isolation from the others. We're really trying to make sure across the numerous commissions and across the city that we're linking some of those, linking a lot more of those chapters and those ideas together, because that's, transportation definitely has a relation to parks and recreation, which has a line into facilities, which helps the environment. So there's a lot of these ideas that really belong in multiple parts of the comprehensive plan. We want to make sure we're capturing those as the Planning Commission with everyone's help and pushing those forward as we decide what we want to be. In terms of specific deadlines, we have requested that we get your initial round of comments, suggestions, ideas in November. And we've provided, I think, an electronic copy of a spreadsheet just to kind of note down what you think. And I know that we worked with the working group on the comprehensive plan to kind of help assign some of those chapters. Some of the chapters are a little less germane to Parks and Recreation, but there is one that's particularly interesting, and really the bailiwick of this group. And so I think you'll be working with your working group to understand those assignments and how you can help in that process. I think in terms of resources, this commission is uniquely well placed. You have an excellent strategic plan that's very up to date. So I think you're ahead of a lot of other commissions. And as a planning commission, we ask that you also kind of look at the Vision Edina 2015 document, as well as the Big Ideas Workshop report, because that will help tease out, I think, some of the broader ideas that we're looking for inclusion across the entire comprehensive plan and not just related to specific sections. And then as the chairperson noted, we are planning tentatively to start, as a planning commission, receiving reports officially from the individual commissions in March. I say that's tentative because that's, for us, seems to be a long way away, but that is initially our plan to do that. And this would probably be one of the first groups we would like to bring along, bring through that process. And that's really the process as it stands. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ted, you said to review two things. You said it quickly, and I missed them. Was it the I on Edina?
Oh, the Vision Edina, 2015.
Vision Edina?
2015, and then the Big Ideas report.
Okay.
I think were those included in the meeting materials? Yes. Okay. And the Big Ideas report is particularly interesting. That was the kickoff meeting for the overall comprehensive plan process that was really intended to bring some of those ideas that have been developed over since the previous comprehensive plan and really look at them in an overarching sense and how do those relate. And that's where this idea of we really need to understand the interplay of a lot of these different parts of the comprehensive plan, that's where that came from.
So following up to what Todd mentioned at the working group, and the working group, just a reminder of who's on that, it's Corin. Corin wasn't at the first meeting, but she's on the working group, Eileen, Greg, and myself. And what we want to do is have everybody read through the 2008 comprehensive plan for the Park and Rec section and bring back comments at our next meeting. And there's a form that is included in our document, a chapter assessment tool, which I think we have a spreadsheet for that. So you can just fill that out as you go through that. And then what we'll do is bring that and probably have a discussion at our next meeting. And then on that Thursday, the 16th of November, we'll have another working group meeting to go through it. Everybody's invited to that. If you would like to attend, please let Janet know by November 1st so we can make sure we handle it correctly depending on how many members we have. And that's when we'll take our first stab going through and highlighting what we think needs to be changed. A lot of it will highlight our strategic plan because we don't necessarily have to rewrite things that are in the strategic plan since that document is out there. And then the other piece is we need members to review other sections of the comprehensive plan from 2008 to make sure that we haven't missed something where we might have an input. And so Anne will, at the end, we've already assigned out some of the larger chapters. There's still a few chapters to be, that we need volunteers for to do that. So any questions on the review process?
I had only one, Todd, maybe you could give us some help or guidance. I've read through a couple of the sections and I notice some very different use of kind of the terms goals, policies, strategies, some long-term, some short-term, some seem to be more tactical. Any guidance on how we should approach that and what might be expected in a finished document?
As I said, I think we intend certainly to be more aspirational. I mean, set the big goals, but also measurable goals. And you'd have, I guess we would say, SMART goals and what we establish. So I think I think to the extent that you can have those aspirational goals, but also set some I think reasonable objectives. And I think there's a balance. And I think one of the steps we will take is also trying to make that a little more consistent across all the chapters. Whereas some chapters I think tend to fewer goals, then they to be more overarching, whereas others
Right.
lend themselves very easily to very specific sets of actions that can be taken. So I think more specific the better, but I think it's what can you achieve in the next 10 years would
But-
be kind of, is if you're going to say goals, certainly you have those aspirations, but you
Right.
say what can be achieved in the next 10 years.
But as opposed to our work plans that
Right.
we do every year that are very near-term, very focused,
Right.
very specific, aspirational, longer-term.
And I think you would look to the comprehensive plan as you're developing your work plan over the next 10 years, that hopefully you would identify items out of the comprehensive plan that need to be worked on. That's how we've done it in the planning commission. That's really been the source for some of our work plan.
Okay.
And then it all, of course, gets pushed to the end. The last 2 years of the 10-year cycle is when you start checking off all the lists.
Finish up the things.
Yeah, that you should have been doing 8
Okay,
years ago.
thanks.
Todd, one other thing you mentioned is that we aren't writing this chapter,
That's
right?
correct.
It's really just input, and then another group that you've hired will write it.
Yes, the consultants will write it, and I think if you really read the comprehensive plan, you'll see there's a chapter or two in there that the voice changes in the writing. We're trying to eliminate that section and also just make it very, very consistent across the document. And hopefully that will address some of the issues with the varying specificity of some of the goals and objectives.
And then you also mentioned, so just to make sure I have this correct, is once it is written, we'll have a chance to review it to make sure it
Yes.
articulates what we wanted
Yes.
to say. Okay. Okay, any other questions for Todd? Or for me on what needs to happen over the next month?
Todd, when you talked about trying to tie things together, just hearing what we're going to be embarking on, I'm guessing we're going to be thinking about Parks and Rec. So we're going to build this thing with Parks and Recs. Somebody else, Transportation, is going to do their thing. So what is the process for helping tie all these silos in?
That's a great question, and it's something we wrestle with quite a bit in the planning commission, because we do see that. You look at a park, well, could you have an educational component in it? So I think that's one of the reasons we're actively engaging the different commissions that hopefully can identify some of these areas that we just can't see and what is most important. I don't think there's not an easy way to do that, unfortunately, but I think that's one of our goals, is to really try and tease those out as much as we can. Certainly, we have a lot of conversations with the planning commission about those, and and hopefully we'll have time to be able to look and try and pull some of those ideas out as well. But I wish there was an easier process, but it's tough.
So Todd, what I was thinking is, as they review those other chapters, they'll take notes, and if there's things that they feel like really the Parks and Rec could be involved in this, that'll go back to that commission, right? And then they can assess whether or not they feel that makes sense for their
Or do you bring it
principles.
up when in your notes, and when we have our meeting with the planning commission, these are some ideas or that we jumped out to us that should be included. So I think planning commission's overall responsibility for the plan. If you see some ideas, we'll make sure, get them in there and make sure they're in the mix appropriately.
So a lot of times when you're doing planning, you kind of do some bottom up and you do top down. And I think that we're kind of involved in the bottom up, I guess. Is there any guiding principles or posts?
Absolutely. So I think if you
from
look
the
to
top
the two
down?
documents I mentioned, the Big Ideas report, which is from this year, and then the Vision Edina 2015, those are probably the two big overarching. If you want to get more specific into land use, which is what the Planning Commission deals with, is you go like the Southdale Guiding Principles document. That would be another place, kind of the broad overarching themes. But I think if you look at that Big Ideas report out, that is the one I think that probably does the best job of everything that's happened over the past 8-9 years in Edina since the previous comprehensive plan, really catalyzing that into some, just a handful of themes, as opposed to 50 ideas that realistically we can't get to. So I think that would be, to me, is kind of the overarching themes I'd be looking at. That Big Ideas report is probably the key document.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
it's not that long, so it's even better.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Todd, and maybe you can all speak in, but I'm just curious in terms of the plan, is there anything that we go back from an accountability standpoint and say, okay, or what point they go back and say, how did we do in 2008? We planned all these things, and what did we do? Or in 10 years from 2018, they're going to sit down and say, here's the things that they said they were going to do and check in, or their checkpoints within the 10 years to say, hey, how are we doing up to the plan that we said? Or I'm just kind of curious in terms of that, because we're spending time and effort to put a plan together, making sure that we're all utilizing the plan that we create. I'm just curious.
I think it varies very much by commission and by department within the city. Certainly in the planning commission, we look at what's in the comprehensive plan, and there was a number of things that need to be done, and we tried to accomplish those over time. And Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, I know the department heads, and as they formulate their work plans, are looking at what's coming out of the comprehensive plan for them. So in terms of accountability to the Metropolitan Council, no, but in terms of how does it set the agenda and the work that needs to be done by the various parts of city government, that I think has a very meaningful impact.
Okay, because you said it was part of the law to actually have it, so I wasn't sure if like Minnesota law, like state goes back and says, oh yeah, this was part of your plan or wasn't in your plan. It's just really there. They want us to have it, but they aren't really holding us accountable to it.
There's some specific things related to land use and zoning, and
That's what they're holding us.
that's that part of it, but a lot of the other part that doesn't, there's no one holding you accountable, other than the citizens, right? So you always
True.
have the citizens' voice.
True. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
And then, Ann, do you want to just mention which chapters we need to review?
Yes, thank you, Brenda. So we have copies of the chapters in the 2008 comprehensive plan that we thought maybe it would make some sense to hand out, so you actually had hard copies. At the meeting that we had last week, Brenda and Eileen and Greg each picked a chapter. Corin, you weren't there, so we picked one for you. If you want to trade, you certainly can do that. But we had, I'm just going to pass these down. We had Greg, Chapter 11, Community Services and Facilities. Brenda had Chapter 8, Water Resources Management. Eileen had the Transportation chapter. Corin, Energy and Environment. And then, okay, we have 3 chapters left. The first is land use. Would anyone like to pick land use? All right, Mike's got land use. The next chapter is, I'll tell you the 2 that are left, housing and historic preservation. Housing. Julie's got housing and historic preservation. All right, Val is going to take historic preservation. That is it.
Oh, good.
Okay, so you can even use this form for the chapter too, if it's helpful, from an assessment tool. If you don't, if you feel like that's helpful, but for the chapter we are going to review, which is the Park and Rec, please fill this out so it's in a common form. Okay, and then just remember to let Janet know if you'd like to attend that meeting on November 16th. It's going to be in the morning, starting at 7:30.
Is there a place that we can put that doc electronically so we can all contribute to it, as opposed to writing it out and then having someone else transpose it?
Which document?
The one that you just said is there. I mean, I know that there's probably some.
Oh, you mean to house it electronically?
Yeah, is there like a place like in Novus or something that we can all go into?
Good idea. I know it's electronic and we could send it in, but is there a place that people could access it?
The chapters that we just, the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was emailed to you. Janet emailed the spreadsheet along with the announcement that the meeting was going up on Novus last week.
Yeah, I know, but are we allowed to type that and then email it to you, or do we have to have it all on Novus because of?
You can email it to me.
Okay, cool.
The meeting on the 16th, and you said it starts at 7:30. How long are you thinking it's going to go?
Right now I have it scheduled till 9, 7:30 to 9. And it'll be here, probably in the mayor's conference room if it's open. Mm-hmm.
Brenda, that's in the morning, right?
Okay, so again, just November 1st if you'd like to attend that meeting. And then otherwise, to let Janet know by November 1st if you'd like to attend the November 16th meeting. Thanks for clarifying. And then to be prepared with the chapter assessment tools completed for our November Park Board meeting, which will be on the 14th. Okay, great. So next item is the guiding principles document or discussion, and Greg's going to lead that.
Yeah, so picking up on the comment that Mike had just made about guiding principles, I had a similar thought after attending our last Braemar Master Plan open house. And that weekend I did happen to go out and walk the, what is that, I guess, the East Hillside, and there were a lot of good insights, a lot of inputs, a lot of different opinions, and I just kind of had a thought as I was walking through there, how do we provide ourselves with some kind of a framework that helps us focus on what's the right direction to go? And so my thought was, should we be thinking about establishing our own guiding principles around some of these park master plans? And I did float that to the city council to see, is that something that they wanted to own and wanted to give us guiding principles, or if it was up to us? And the two responses I got back were both along the lines of, no, we think that's probably a good idea for you to do, and then present that to us, right, as part of your thought process. And so I just had kind of typed one up that I think is included in your packet just as an example and maybe a starting point about thinking about Braemar. But I think it could also have applied as we were doing Arden or Fred Richards, or as we go to Weber. And I just had 5 thoughts as I was thinking about some guiding principles that some of these I think we're already using, as I said in this document. But one would be, for example, the primary focus as we go through this master plan is primary focus within Braemar is to be golf. And that other things that we might think about, we certainly want to find ways to utilize that land. But those, as we add those amenities, it should be clear that they must coexist with golf, but not be considered equal with golf. So the guiding principle there is that we're utilizing this as a golf asset and looking for ways to enhance and amplify the overall park, but not detract from the golf itself, right? So that was one example. The second was we get a lot of input from the neighbors, and we certainly want to encourage that. And so my statement was broad community input is important, and especially from neighbors who live near Braemar. But change is expected in order to improve the site. Doing nothing is not an expected outcome from the effort. Because I've heard it at Fred Richards, I've heard it again at Braemar, I think we heard it at Arden, just leave it alone. And I'm not sure that we necessarily have that option in some cases when we're charged with looking at this asset that the city has and saying, you know, this is an asset that needs to be utilized within proper parameters. So that would be another guiding principle that I might suggest. Third was executing on reasonable environmental improvements. The plan must be a specific, executing on a reasonable environmental improvement plan must be a specific outcome within the master plan. So we don't want to leave that out. We have an opportunity to drive some change. It should be expected that addressing environmental issues are part of the master plan. Fourth, the expectation of the master plan should prioritize an outcome that benefits our Edina community rather than create a strong regional destination. And again, that could be open for our own debate, whether we believe that is indeed the case, or should it be something that is akin to a Highlands that is nearby and say, no, we want to have a regional draw. Just thought I would post that as something for us to kick around. And then the last was, as we get a lot of people bringing up different ideas, I think we can come to the point where we tend to grind to a halt because we can't figure out the perfect plan. And so the last statement I made is one that we use sometimes at work, and it's, do not let perfect be the enemy of good. In other words, seek a balanced outcome that provides meaningful, positive outcomes across a number of interests, but may not provide the perfect desired solution for any one particular group. And I think we hear that bantered back and forth, and I read some of it on social media. Oh, this is all about mountain biking. And all you guys are doing is just catering to the mountain bike community. And someone else will say something different, and someone else will say something different. So this was just a thought process that I started to go through to say, would we find this useful to create 2, 3, 4 guiding principles for each of these master plans we're trying to do that we're all saying that's how we agree, that's how we're being guided, and if something comes up, we could apply it back to a guiding principle to see if that helps us very quickly move past it. So I wanted to offer that up for some thoughts, discussion, and see if it seems like something would be useful to create.
Member Miller. So first of all, I think it's a great idea because right now I don't think we have any really guideposts to work with. One thing that always comes up in my mind, though, when we talk about any of these things is finances. And I'm wondering how we can maybe incorporate something of finances in this also, because we can do wonderful things with unlimited funds, but it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I had a similar thought too, Mike, is that there can be somewhat of a growing frustration almost that we've gone through, now some work on Fred Richards, some work on Arden, some work now on Braemar, and yet no specific funding tied to it. Mm-hmm. So we could, and then just again to kind of throw some thoughts out, we could say, would one of our guiding principles be, well, we don't engage in one of these unless we have funding secured. That might be challenging, right? The other, because the sense I get in some of these is we put a plan together and the plan may have to sit in the shelf for a while until funding is found. But I like it. I do think that's another one that we should have some sense of what are our expectations around the economic feasibility or viability of getting funding for something.
Certainly, because it really drives the decisions and the discussions on what you want to do. We could make ski hills, or we could put in a little walking path. They're two vastly different things. So, the other comment I had when you talked about for the Edina community, I would guess that our enterprise facilities would not really go by that guiding principle, because I would assume that those are for-profit centers we want to attract, not just from Edina, but from the region.
Yep, agreed. Mm-hmm. And just to clarify again, my thought on this was we would create this potentially with every master plan we're doing. So you're right, if we went then to Edinburgh, probably have a different guiding principle for that one, right? They're not all set in stone for every single plan that we approach. Great point.
Member McCauley, I think it's a great idea because it puts in writing for the community input that they know there was a process to what we did, and that didn't just come out of the sky and somebody came up with a brilliant idea. That we have a process behind what we're doing, we want their input, it's part of the process, and then there are steps as we go forward. So I think it's good for the public too to see that. Thanks, Greg.
I think the other piece, piggybacking on Member McCauley, is the communication piece. So that's the other thing I think we've heard loud and clear through the last probably couple of years that we've all been sitting up here and going through some of these exercises, and really kind of refining based off of those inputs some of these guiding principles, and not to sound harsh, but some of these then end up being non-negotiables. So let's use the Arden Park example. If the 54th Bridge Dam was a non-negotiable in that process, we should have let the community know, as opposed to letting them, think that there might be some other way, there might be an opportunity to do something different or whatever. And that's just an example. it's not maybe the right example, but I'm using that as an example. So as we're going through this, if a guiding principle is something that's more about, as you've got like number 1 here, Braemar is about golf. If that is the guiding principle, then it's important that we communicate with the other athletic boards and community to say, this is why we're doing this, because the non-negotiable here is that we are building a training and recreational golf facility with some amenities that are going to be wrapped around that. And I think that would be a really important part. So, as part of the things that Julie and I and Corin, I think, are working on from the communication piece, I think that's where I think we can really kind of try and help with some of these guiding principles to the community.
Okay, good. That's exactly what I really like about this, is that we can use this during our community outreach to make sure that they know that this is what's supported by the city council. So as Greg was talking about this, anything we came up with a guiding principle would go to the city council for approval, so we knew we had their backing on it before, of course, we would introduce it to the community. And I think you wanted to try to get some guiding principles for Braemar tonight, or do you want people just to start thinking about that?
I'm open to either one. I know that you really, the rest of you just got a chance to see this maybe yesterday or over the weekend. So certainly open to say we want to think about it for the next month and put it on the agenda for next month. That's fine with me as well.
Sorry, I will take a chance, and the only one I would say does number one change now that Tin Fish closed. And the reason I ask that is we're going out to RFP to other restaurants, and they're going to look at something that's available to guests for 365 days. And I think that probably one of the things that Tin Fish would say was the golf course, and then it closed for the season, and then it opened, and then it was closed for construction. And based off of some other conversations that I've heard, there weren't any other amenities in the park that were going to drive traffic to the park that would then be able to be easily converted to guests in their restaurant. So I'm just wondering if I get scared when I see the primary focus of Braemar's golf.
I think on the golf too, we need to be a little careful because there's a section of Braemar that is definitely golf. There's also a section that is baseball and hockey, and there's a soccer dome. So I think what you're talking about is that development that we want to do with all the paths on the golf side. So we just need to make sure we're broad enough, but because hopefully maybe there's a way that some of those other facilities at Braemar could bring in people into that restaurant area. But
I also had the same concern with number 4. I wonder how much, if you're talking about bringing in a new restaurant and we're saying, would they think of this as more of a regional facility, the golf course and what surrounds it, and that being their customer base, or is it Edina focused? And I don't know, and I don't know the users of the golf course. I think maybe this came up at a previous meeting, but I think the user of the golf course is more of a regional asset, and so maybe what we're specifically talking about is the trails and the bike paths are designed to be more Edina specific than regional, but I think we'd want to be careful how we phrase that because we are talking about an entire master plan.
Right. Yep.
And to that point, that it is an enterprise facility, similar to what we were talking about with Edinburgh. So if we have certain specifications for the enterprise facilities, which we expect to break even, we could maybe tackle some of those principles too, and build them into this. But
yeah, I think both of those comments really raise some of the complexities with trying to do this for something as big as a master plan, right? Because the plan itself, we think, has a particular focus to it, but it's embedded in a much bigger 500-acre asset that then will make this somewhat challenging. So really good insights and inputs.
okay, well, I think any other comments for Greg? Well, I think this is a really good start and a really great idea for us to have some, 3-4 principles that guide us through these master plans so we don't get all of this kind of discussion and really a lot of kind of angst over certain things that aren't changeable in the process that we go through. So why don't we take this and think about it, and we can bring back ideas and have it as a discussion next month. Greg?
Good.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Thanks, Greg. The next item on our agenda is just to review the work plan from 2017. I think we have some really fantastic results as you look at it. It should be right on at your seat. So we'll quickly go through it. But the Art and Park Natural Resource Plan that Julie and Eileen worked on, really great work on that. We've come to some resolution on that, and there's next steps that are being taken. So I would say that's complete from what we had expected to participate in. The Braemar Park Master Plan is moving along quite well, and just in the midst of that, so just continue our timeline. And Fred Richards' Master Plan, again, we've made a lot of progress this year on that master plan. Again, there's more work to do, and it'll probably continue into next year where we'll need to be involved. And then the next item on the park signage, again, just a really great project, which we've brought to conclusion with that last bid, and we came in under. We'll be able to do some additional signage. So really great outcome on that. And then, like we just talked earlier today, we've kicked out the comprehensive plan. We thought we would get started earlier, but we're really on the timeline of the Planning Commission. And then Weber Woods just hasn't started yet, so that'll move to next year or whenever the city's ready for that. So I think we just had a really, really great year, at least completing all our work plan items. Don't you think, Anne?
Pretty remarkable, actually. Thank you for all of your help. We couldn't have finished all the master planning that we did, and the park signage project was huge as well. Thank you very much.
So that's all. I just wanted to go through that, and I think everybody should leave feeling really positive. We're only in October, and we pretty much ticked off all of our projects. I haven't seen that before since I've been on the commission, so great work on that.
Sounds like we should have a picture of signs.
Yeah, I love that idea. We'll do that as soon as the signs. Next month, okay.
We'll fight over which signs.
That's right. So may I offer one suggestion or a request? On our work plan itself, I will constantly look down to the council charge and say, now what does 2 mean? Right? And so would it be possible to just add those 4 up at the top, right? 1 is study and report, 2 is review and comment, 3 is review and recommend, 4 is review and decide. It would at least be helpful for me. I don't know if anybody else, but for me, it would be helpful if we could just have those on the top, and that way. Do you understand what I mean, Susan?
Absolutely. This
Okay.
form is a form that is a city form, so we can't add it to this, but we could add a separate sheet that would have that.
Otherwise, we have to go through a city referendum to get them to change this form.
No, but we can certainly add another sheet for you.
Yeah. Okay, otherwise I'll keep my notes. Thanks.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Can I just ask a question on signage tying into communication? Where's the first sign going to go? When's it planning on being put in? Is there going to be any communication or event around this first event?
We don't have an exact date yet on when the first sign is going to be installed. I don't think we've put a plan in place for like which park will go first. I'm working on that right now. I'm still trying to finalize. So there was a little bit of a delay because of the cedar posts. Wood was hard to get with a lot of the hurricanes in the south. So we're a little bit behind schedule. We are hoping to be installing here next week, and it looks like they're going to try to push it back to the beginning of November. I should have a better idea of the exact time, probably the beginning of next week. But yes, as soon as we have those details, we've already done some posts, some Facebook posts, some things on Nextdoor when we took the signs down, and we'll do something similar when we start that installation to make sure that everyone is aware, and maybe we can get some photos.
Susan, when we do that, can we put some information in there about the life expectation of the signs to alleviate some of the concerns of citizens out there who think we wasted money replacing signs? I think there's a lack of awareness as these things don't last forever.
We can certainly do that. Yep, that's a good point.
I will say, though, I think the communication around the sign replacement has been, I've been really impressed with the opportunities that have been taken advantage of to communicate this. I'm sure it was done with the timing, thinking that we were going to have the signs put in a little bit closer to when that big push happened, but I saw it in a couple different places, and I did see the concern from some residents about why are we paying for this, and so maybe there's an opportunity as we have a little bit more time where we're going to have to make an announcement again to weave in that message about why now and why we think these signs are a good investment for the community. So
I would just piggyback on that. The other thing I would add is explaining actually what a park dedication fee is and what it's allowed to be used for, because I didn't see that in the communication. It referenced that the park dedication fee is what's paying for it, but I'm not sure that people really know when we get a park dedication fee and when we don't get one, and then what are the parameters around how it's used in terms of might be helpful. And then my other question was, I think we kind of joked a little and talked about it, but what are they doing with the old signs that they're removing? Yes, I think we should auction them off, but
I think
I
it's
mean,
too,
right?
it's too late for that, to auction them off, unfortunately. So our park maintenance team had some time to go ahead and remove all of those signs. So they are, I don't know where the end place for them, but they were at one of the, I don't want to say dump sites, but one of the places where, waiting to be removed, a site that the city uses to remove the signs, and I don't know where they were going from there, to be honest.
Okay, any other comments on the 2017 work plan? Okay, well, again, good job, everybody. Thank you for all your time on those items. So now we'll turn to chair and member comments. I have just a couple things I wanted to mention. Greg and I attended the city council meeting on the 2018 work plan, and I thought we had some really good discussion with the city council on our items. So just a reminder of what they are. First, it's any of the work or any of the master plans that would carry over. So that could be Braemar, Arden Park, but Weber Woods might start up, Fred Richards. And I will say that I could tell that they really appreciated all the work, and they realize that these take a long time and a lot of our time. So they did mention that. And then our other items were to look at fundraising opportunities or ways to get sponsorships or whatever we think might make the most sense there. And they were very interested to hear what that would look like. And we explained that would be something that we'd be getting back to them sometime probably in the late spring on our thoughts on that. So, and then they were also very interested in the communication and marketing initiative that we outlined. And we also heard that theme throughout the other commissions. So I think what we can do is, once we have a better idea of how we want to go forward, is reach out to those commissions and see what we might be able to do together to make that as efficient as possible for the city. And then the comprehensive plan, which we've just talked about how we're going to kick that off. Greg, any comments that you want to make?
Yeah, I would just echo on the marketing and communication plan. One thought that I had to share with that team for next year is a couple of the other commissions talked about utilizing events here in Edina to set up communication tables, basically, right? And say at the Open Streets event, they'd have a table set up. At the Fall and Art event, they'd have a table set up. That there may be opportunities for us to think about whether that fits as well, for us to just man a table at some of these events and have information about the parks, or at least allow people to approach us and ask questions, complaints, whatever it might be, right? But I thought that was a very good way to kind of be available and involved.
And I forgot about another very important item we had, which was the field capacity and utilization. And again, they thought that would be very helpful as well, and Greg went into a little bit more detail about what that would look like. So.
Much like Member Darlene, they immediately went to, how about ice and courts? So it'll be broad, probably.
The other item I wanted to mention, and Anne may mention this in her notes, is that she sent out a communication on the Arden Park meeting that they're holding. Let's see, it's going to be on 10/26 at 6:45, and I think it would be really nice to have some of the park or the Park and Rec Commission members there. So please make every effort to attend. I think that'll help us stay ahead of that project as we move into next year. Any comments that you have, or any, and then we'll pass it on to the members.
I had just one to share. Last Friday, I did get a chance to stop in at the Edinburgh Park 30-year celebration, and was very impressed with the level of activity inside the park. I have to admit, it's been years since I've been in there, and when I walked in there on Friday, I immediately brought the average age up significantly. But just, kids all over the place, just active and loud, and it was a really nice celebration, and was also impressed by the fact that they had a sign up and talking about the fact that they host 1,300 birthday parties each year. And I'm just thinking about 1,300 birthday parties. It's a lot of activity, right? So I thought it seemed like a very well-organized, well-attended event, and enjoyed half an hour that I just walked around and got refamiliarized myself with Edinburgh Park. So, well done.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Any other comments? Okay, Anne, I'll turn it over to you for staff comments.
Thank you very much, Brenda. I do have quite a few comments this evening. We have a lot going on in the department right now. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. As was mentioned earlier, the Tin Fish restaurant at Braemar closed last Thursday after unsuccessfully trying to negotiate a lease amendment to reflect the golf course construction. The owners of the Tin Fish indicated their desire to change the direction of their business, and we negotiated a separation agreement. The city staff is working on a request for proposal for a new restaurant vendor, and will begin the process of finding a new restaurant partner as soon as possible. Our goal will be to have a new vendor in place sometime probably in the second quarter of 2018. At the arena, October is a very busy month. In addition to the start of the EHA season, we have 3 major projects that are taking place. The dome installation process actually started today with the installation of the doors. The fabric installation is scheduled for the 20th and the 21st of October. That is weather permitting. We can't have a lot of rain or wind, so we're hoping for good weather conditions on that day. After that, it takes about a week to install the lights, the insulation, the security system, the pull stations, and test the HVAC system. The first rental is scheduled for November 4th. The futsal court will be removed on October 17th, and the process to install the backyard rink will begin. And our first ice rental is planned for November 4th. The evaporative condenser on the South Arena is going to be replaced the week of October 16th, and this is a very significant component of the ice making system. The old condenser will be removed, a new one will be placed on the roof, pipes will be reconnected, and the new ice will be installed. And it takes about 2 weeks to complete this process. In recreation, adult volleyball started at Valley View Middle School and the Edina High School. 16 teams are separated into women's and co-rec leagues. We are taking registrations for adult basketball until the end of October, and the league starts in November. The Edina boys flag football is wrapping up at the end of October with games at Kuhlman Stadium, and this year we have 231 participants and over 20 volunteer coaches. We are also currently working with the Edina Baseball Association to submit an application for the Hennepin County Youth Sports Grant to improve lighting at Field 1 at Courtney Fields. September was the National Senior Center Month, and with over 11,000 senior centers nationwide, it was a big celebration. And the Senior Center celebrated by having programs above and beyond what we typically do on a daily basis, and all programs were very well attended. At the Arts Center, we celebrated the 33rd Annual Members Juried Art Exhibition on Thursday, October 5th. There were 72 works and 208 pieces were entered. The exhibit is on display through November 8th, and admission is free and the public is welcome. And we have over 178 classes at the Art Center in the 2017-2008 Winter Activities Directory. As Greg mentioned, Edinburgh Park on Friday, October 6th, we celebrated our 30th anniversary. We had activities and programs throughout the day. And in honor of the 30th anniversary, we offered a $30 discount for our Adventure Peak memberships and Pool and Track memberships. And we were even surprised that we sold 104 of those memberships that day. 94 were for Adventure Peak and 10 were for the Pool and Track. We also offered reduced daily admissions from our normal $7 per child to $3 per child, and we sold 386 general admissions. So it was a really great and successful day at Edinburgh Park. In golf, on October 6th, we hosted the Edina Education Fund at the Golf Dome. It was a very large non-golf event and went very well. October 7th, we hosted the Edina Home Energy Fair. October 13th, we will be hosting the city's Urban Vision Symposium. October 18th, we will be hosting a wine and canvas event. October 25th starts the Northwoods Boutique moving in, and they will be open to the public from October 27th until November 12th. November 1st will be the opening day for the Golf Dome, and November 15th we'll be hosting another wine and canvas at the clubhouse. We have a Facebook link to construction updates for our new golf course. So check out those Facebook updates and you'll see pictures of the golf course construction. And lastly, Centennial Lakes. We are very much in fall cleanup mode and getting things shut down for the season. Some of the major tasks are aerating putting greens in the lawn games area, blowing out irrigation and drinking fountains. We need to remove and winterize the lake fountains, winterize the putting course ponds, the fountains. We've got different bubbler fountains throughout the promenade and throughout the entire park. And we have a lot of work to do on the perennials and the plantings, cutting down and removing annuals. And we also need to remove, clean, and store all of our paddle boats. So it's a pretty significant process just to winterize that park. That is all I have for updates.
Great, thanks, Ann. Yeah, really busy time, isn't it? But exciting time. So, any questions for Ann? Okay, well, good. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting, and so if I could get a motion to adjourn. A second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, well, we're adjourned. Thank you.